All right, this is my mom.
Hi.
This is the original Mrs. G, and my mother wrote and illustrated children's books, so that's where this all came from. So let's talk a little bit about reading in our house.
Well, there were always books.
Yep.
There were always books all over. Neat, messy books in the... Dad had history books. You had especially adventure books.
Yeah.
And books to chill your bones.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, those were the best kind.
I think they still are.
They're very exciting.
Yeah.
And you always loved anything that had a lot of energy and pep and rhythm and beeping around and bopping around, and you would make up stories, and so would I.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was the most natural thing to do.
Yeah.
And I
That's
remember...
kind of how we entertained each other.
Absolutely. Because this was long before anybody had a digital game or anything like that.
None of
We
that.
had radio, we had
Old
TV,
school.
and we had books. It was totally old school. But it didn't feel like old school because that's what we had.
No.
I mean, it's just
It
what
was
we
kind
did.
of, it was kind of cutting edge at the
But
time.
I remember pretending to be a different kind of mother and having two different boys. And I would talk like this, and I would tell them to behave in the back seat, stop punching each other, that just settle down.
It just made us laugh, really.
It just was ridiculous, and we did that on the way to school.
Yep.
On the way to school, I remember I wanted to listen to classical music.
Oh, yeah.
You didn't.
Rock and roll for me.
Rock and roll, and I didn't get rock and roll in those days.
No.
Now
It took a while.
I see how much I missed.
Tell me
Yeah.
about the library, our standing date at the library.
So we went to the library like clockwork. I mean, it was every week. We just never missed a week, and we took out as many books as we could.
Yeah.
Always the maximum number.
Yep.
And it was always sort of a treasure hunt to find them
Yeah.
at the end of the week, because there must have been 20 books. And we
Mhm.
would go back and do the same thing all over again.
Right.
And there was a time when Mr. G had sort of an injury to his leg, and the librarian was especially interested in helping find books that would be really especially scary, especially exciting.
Yeah, yeah.
Because she knew how much you loved those.
Right, right.
So maybe they were books on adventure, but they were always books. There were always books on sports too.
Yeah.
Especially hockey and baseball.
Loved hockey and baseball. Well, tell them a little bit about your work as an author and illustrator for
Well,
kids.
As I say, always loved to make up stories, and I like to draw. So it seemed like the most natural thing to make pictures to go with the words. And ideally, the pictures did something that the words couldn't. So I started working for magazines and then books. And
We've got one right here.
we have one right here. This is actually one I illustrated by Charlotte Zolotow, called Some Things Go Together. And this one is dedicated...
This is a personal favorite. You'll see why in a
This is a personal
second.
favorite. It's called Some Things Go Together. And I said it should be hugs with kisses for Ben. What's Mr. G's name? Before he was Mr. G, he was Ben. Because he wasn't always Mr. G with a hat.
I think it was my 5th birthday when you started calling me Mr. G, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Maybe the 5th birthday, I think, yeah.
But I mean, it was always clear. He was so comfortable performing and loved to make sounds, loved to sort of tap along his knee or figure out different rhythms that you could make with wood, with tin, with stone, anything that was around.
Well, you know, I still talk about that with kids when I go to schools. Like, you've got instruments at the end of your, like, anywhere you go, you've got instruments with you and you're playing different parts of your body.
That's
you know?
a great way to put it.
But that's kind of what I did as a kid and drove you crazy a lot of the time.
Sure. And I remember when you were practicing with your band, and you were in the basement, and
The
I was in the
Immigrants.
kitchen.
This is my band when I was in elementary school. We were called the Immigrants.
I would feel the bottoms of my feet would vibrate because there was so much power coming from the basement, where you and Ajay and other kids were rocking and rolling.
I've got to thank you. You let us make a lot of noise in that basement.
Well, that's what a basement's for.
All right.
Luckily, we had a basement. where you could just make a mess and make a lot of noise, and we loved it. I mean, we thought it was great that he was doing something he wanted, and it was something that really came as a surprise to us because, as I said, I'm an artist. Mr. G's dad is a teacher, professor of history, and this huge love of music, writing songs, making anything into a song, whether it's about squirrels, whether it's about pizza, anything can be a subject for a song.
Yeah, yeah.
And anything can be a subject for a book.
Right, right.
So I did books about a boy and his cat. I did a book about Halloween. I did a book about two little girls who were sisters. An old man and a little girl who were friends. Anything can be a story. And I think Mr. G learned that early on.
For sure.
And we never did things sort of by the package. We always did things from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
And we liked making things with our hands.
Like lunch. I think it's time for that pretty soon.
It's time for lunch.
Yeah.
And it's also time to remember just what fun it was. What fun it was just to have such a creative child year after year.
Well, thanks, Mom. You made it fun.
I love doing it.
All right.
Okay.